Hey D&D fam, I'm Quick.
And I'm Lee, and you're listening to
Divas and Ducats. So what is a diva? I think divas get a bad rep, but to me, diva is all about the attitude.
As for ducats, it's your finances, your assets, Skrilla, guap, your coin. We're talking all things with the potential to affect your pockets.
And while we're attorneys by trade, we are divas by choice. Divas and Ducats is for edutainment purposes.
Y'all, we are not Series 511 or 703 professionals. This does not create a financial advisor or attorney-client relationship. The views expressed here are solely our opinions and the opinions of our guests.
It's just our opinion, y'all. Okay, divas, let's talk ducats.
Welcome back, D&D fam. How is everyone doing?
Yes. We hope you're doing well. It is my favorite time of the year, the fall.
The season of pumpkin spice.
I know, and everything nice. Pumpkin ale for the ale drinking.
Some of them are good. Some of them I could do without.
But that brand Pumpkin is just so delicious.
I mean, the Smoothie King pumpkin is cool. I had one of their shakes. But
that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the actual like pumpkin spice latte. It just doesn't do it for me. More of a sweet potato kind of girl. But welcome to the fall and welcome back. We have a really important topic today on our docket. We're talking about a father's parental rights and what happens or what you can do if you feel like access is being denied. I think a lot of times when we talk about custody and visitation, you hear a lot from, mom's point of view, especially if mom is like the primary caretaker and just issues that moms go through with that, issues with child support, issues with, getting dads to really be active sometimes in their child's life. And so, but we want to talk to and about and inform those who maybe are very well-meaning dads and those dads who want to be active, who want to be in their child's life and are just feeling like there's a lot of blocks, right?
Yeah, like it's the whole wall that they're coming against. And I think it's an important topic to talk about now, especially because there's this whole movement, and not to say that this topic is cornered in the black market at all. Like, it's not a black person's issue.
No.
Because divorce is rampant and people go through child visitation and custody all the time, right? So it's not always a situation where you think about child support or child custody and it's about somebody's deadbeat parent, right?
Yeah.
That's usually, that doesn't have to be the case. But I was just going to say that there seems to be this whole movement going on that's showcasing fathers in their relationships with children, right, on social media. And I just really appreciate it because I think that for so long the content has been so negative. And like you said, whenever people think about child support, they instantly think about what is the mom getting? Or, that the mom has the children. And in a large majority of the cases it is. In a large majority of the cases, I mean, women are still nurturers and
there's an expectation that they're primary
right
parent.
So it's not to knock that, but I think the focus usually is so heavily on that that for those fathers that are trying, they feel left in the weeds sometimes, like there isn't any help. And definitely have heard many times that they already feel like the court system is against them just because of their sex. So we wanted to come on here and try to clarify some things, provide some actual legal knowledge about some things, and just help where we can.
Yeah, for sure. Because co-parenting is multiracial.
Yes, it is.
So, I think a lot of times, that term I think is colloquialized in the Black community, baby mama, baby daddy. But you could technically be a baby mama, baby daddy if you're any. That's not, it just.
And I mean, I definitely say, go back to like divorce. We know statistically, it's white Americans that are, they make up the large majority of that
50% that are
just because they make up a larger part of the population.
Correct.
So if they're the larger part of marital, then they're by statistics, larger part of the divorce, right?
Correct.
So they are also going through child support issues, going through child visitation issues. So it's definitely not an us situation.
Yeah.
But again, when it comes to court, we do know that Black fathers are still, by and large, they're treated differently.
Yeah, and I think there's a stigma. There's an assumption sometimes, unfortunately, that like
they don't take
someone
care of the
isn't
kids.
or someone isn't in a 2-parent home, or
right?
Things like that. So, I guess let's first up is like what a father's parental rights are, right? So when people think about, okay, I want to, me and my partner, whether we're married or not, we're not working out, so we have to figure out how we're going to divide up the time with this child, right? So just standard situation. Obviously, things might be changed a little different if there's a danger to the child, right? But like, what are the basic parental rights that a father has?
So I'll say, basic, like we sometimes say, break it down for a 5th grader, break it down for a 3rd grader. At the very bottom line of it, a father's parental rights are the same as a mother's parental rights.
Okay.
He has the right to, visitation. He has the right to, by law, he has to take care of that child financially. Just like the mother has the right to obligation to take care of that child financially. And just, in larger things, just being in that child's life. Essentially.
Right.
It's just, to me, it's just it's no different than a mother's parental rights. Of course, when you look into the circumstances of things, and that can change.
Yeah.
But at the bottom line, whatever the mother's parental rights are, the father has those legal parental rights as well.
Right. So I think one thing that's important to maybe differentiate is physical versus legal custody. So legal custody is just that. It's the rights to decide your day-to-day decisions for the child. So if you're religious, what religion the child practices, where the child goes to school, things of that nature are the more so legal custody, right?
Yeah.
And
education, religion, especially talking about health, going to the doctor.
Those kind of decisions are the legal. Whereas physical custody is who physically has the child. Right. And you'll see in different court orders that kind of is divided up based on the type of custody or visitation that parents have, right? So that is just who is supposed to have the child when.
Right.
And there's variations of this. Sometimes one parent can have sole custody while the other parent has visitation. Sometimes the parents will share joint, custody in both situations, like legal and physically. They'll share joint. But if there's an issue where the 2 parents can't agree, then, they'll figure out, or the court order will decide, well, who's the tiebreaker? Because obviously if there's 1 and 1, someone has to make the decision. So, at the bare minimum, those are 2 different things we're talking about when it comes to figuring out who's making those decisions versus who actually has a child. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And also to that, by law, you have to, like, both parents have legal custody, right? It is the basic line is joint legal custody. So when somebody goes into court and says, I want to file for custody, right? They're usually the courts are usually looking, okay, you're talking about physical custody. Because if you don't argue for reasons for a person not to have legal custody, then they're going to, there's an assumption that there's joint legal custody, right? That standard of proof is a little bit higher than when it is physical custody, right? You have to prove that the parent is unfit, that they shouldn't have legal custody. Maybe there would be reasons if they've moved out of state or they haven't seen the child. There are reasons that, it makes it difficult. And we're not talking about y'all can't just get along on the phone, right? But there are reasons that if that child went to the hospital tonight, there might be, you don't want to have to worry about having to contact the other parent because
Right.
of obstacles, not because you don't want to call them,
Right.
but obstacles that would make that decision to call the doctor. Okay, we both can't make this decision, right? And like Lee was saying, in the court order, it will say that one parent or the other has the final decision-making authority, right? So if we can't agree on this, we both have joint legal custody, but at the end of the day, I'm going to make what's in the best interest of the child. And that is the standard when it comes to the court right. What is the best interest of the child?
Right. And I wanted to point out, because when you were saying that, it made me think about just the actual, we're talking about orders. But if you don't have an order in place, it's almost like the court's hands are tied. Because like you said, that presumption that you both share, this is it's your children, your child collectively. So those situations where you don't have an order, you have this child and you're not getting along or what have you, I've seen and heard about those situations where I'm supposed to pick up my kid on Saturday and she's not letting him come.
Right.
And you could try to call the police, but without an order, there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing for them to enforce, because legally, outside of having an order that emphatically states the conditions, there's nothing that they can do. So I would really encourage, of course, too, in situations that are amicable, but especially in situations that are not, when you're not able to kind of get along with mom, and in those situations where it hasn't been just the easy kind of flow, you definitely need to get an order, because there's nothing that the sheriff, police officer, etc. can do if someone's not adhering to an order that doesn't exist. Your word of mouth agreement is not enforceable when that person decides, oh, I changed my mind. And again, that's more likely to happen in those situations where it's like, okay, we don't get along and we're not in a good space.
And to that effect, too, like, the police are not there to be a mediator in your relationship. So if you do have a court order and, let's say it's Father's Weekend and he has the child and you get mad at him and want him back and now you want to call the police, all he has to do is show the order. This is my weekend. And that's all. The police going to be like, okay, we see the document, we see the court order, and they're going to go on about their business. They are not there to be mediators in your relationship. So, that's something else too. To think about with that. And it's a whole different subject outside of child support and visitation, but I also think without that court order, it does make it difficult in kidnapping situations, right? Because like you said, the at the very basic, you both have joint legal custody. So let's talk about the custodian versus a non-custodian parent, what that kind of gears towards.
Okay, so non-custodian, my understanding, when I hear non-custodian, I think it's the parent who has visitation.
Right.
So if you're the parent, and sometimes that's mom. I mean, a lot of times people think like, oh, mom has custody and dad has visitation, but sometimes it's in reverse. And so that parent who has the visitation rights is the non-custodial parent. Right.
Yeah. So it does, when you hear that term, it is talking about the physical custody, not the legal custody of it, whether you're custodial or non-custodial parent. And the non-custodial, it also depends on the number of days. Like, you could be a custodial parent, but that other child is visiting their other parent for the summer. That doesn't make you suddenly a non-custodial parent over the summer, right? So it's just a legal term talking about the legal definition of whether you are being granted physical custody, and depending on how many days within the calendar year that you have makes you a non-custodial or custodial parent. So talking about visitation, and let's say you have that court order. The court orders has ordered where the visitation is played out. They've also ordered child support. And the parent isn't paying child support. How does that affect visitation? Can a person keep their child from the father in this instance, because we are focusing on the father's parental rights? Can the mother keep a child from the father because the father is not paying child support?
So the short answer in North Carolina, let me be clear, is no.
Right.
So in North Carolina, they're two separate issues. I cannot guarantee, depending on what state you're in, you definitely want to research your state, but I can't guarantee in those other states that doesn't play a factor. here where we are located, they're two separate issues. Now, a straight out refusal to pay may be considered in what's the best interest for the child. Maybe when you're going through some of the custody hearings, like, okay, do we really want to grant full custody to this parent who is refusing to support their child? But in terms of actual still having rights to visit your child and still being able to enforce if there's a custody agreement, that has no bearing. Now, you may be held in contempt because, again, a separate case or issue is dealing with your child support. So that still may result in you being in arrears, depending on how they have it set up with your job, dealing with some garnishments, things like that you may face if you're not paying, up to, some people get arrested for not failing to pay child support. So you're not in the clear just because you're not paying. But if you're behind, no, mom can't just say like, oh, you can't see your child because you're 2 months behind.
Right. And to that point, I think a lot of times fathers are afraid to enforce visitation or go to court if there's a court order to enforce mother to let him see his child if he's behind on arrears, right? And it's a legit concern. It's definitely a legit concern because it is, by law, it is punishable by jail time, depending on how much, like you said, how much you owe. But what I will say to that is be proactive.
Right.
Be proactive. If you know that you cannot pay child support or you have to have it reduced because of job or you're on some kind of hardship. We're not talking about the people that mom is withholding visitation, so you're withholding money, right? Both of y'all are in the wrong. But if you actually have some kind of hardship, be proactive and go try to get a modification of your child support.
Right.
And that also is going to show the court when you're going in for visitation, right, that you tried to do something on the child support end, right? They don't want to throw you in jail for not paying child support. They truly do not.
Right.
But just, I would say be proactive because I know from what I hear so many times is that they feel like their hands are just tied and it's just, that mom just really has all the control because of whatever issues there are with child support. Now, when you start letting your child support roll, like I know people that owe tens of thousands of dollars in child support, that's a completely different issue, right? But it's just, I would definitely urge you to be proactive. It's easy enough to go file for a modification in court if you've fallen on some kind of hardship. And then also when you're filing child support, usually, unless you're married and there's a presumption when you're married that the child is of the marriage, that they have to prove that the child is, the father's, either through the parental affidavit when the child was born, it was signed, birth certificate. If that is not in there, then you could require testing for the child for child support. And a lot of time people do acknowledge without that kind of proof. Yeah. If you want to take that risk, then that's on you. But once you take the risk, you can't untake it.
Right.
Now
once you said this my baby.
Right. So that usually has to go into play before child support can even be issued against that parent. So,
and to that I'll say, you're talking about really like being proactive. The other thing is, I think like most situations, people are willing to work with you if you're showing that you're trying, right? So, okay, if you can't pay, I'm just using a round number. If you can't pay $500, put something on it.
Right.
At least show like, no, I fell short, but I gave her what I could. And what I also say to people is make sure you do things with a paper trail. Giving mom cash, it's going to be hard to prove, especially like I said, in a contentious situation, that you actually paid child support.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Unless it's through Cash App.
I mean, Cash App is traceable. You
that's
can put
true.
four.
That's what I'm saying. Unless it's through that.
For child support or, cashier's check.
Just don't do it.
So, go down there to the post office and get you a little certified. Anything that shows a paper trail of I did pay XYZ. I think definitely works in your favor at least.
Absolutely.
In those situations. But I I cannot urge enough. And here in North Carolina, you don't get a court-appointed attorney for these matters, for family matters.
Right.
So we have, legal aid here. I know in our county, most counties have it, but definitely like Mecklenburg County, there's a self-serve center. You can file a lot of these documents for little to nothing and go before the court. They have many resources if money is an issue to make sure that you are, allowed to see your child. And I would urge you sooner than later, at the point where the relationship is becoming contentious, have an order. It's just, it's not worth all the back and forth.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and it cuts out a lot of the, I'm not going to say it cuts out a lot of the back and forth, because obviously sometimes having those orders do not. But what it does cut out is not having the enforceability of it, right? The drama's gonna be there until y'all just choose to grow up and figure things out.
Yeah.
But it does definitely go through the enforceability of making sure that child, that you can see your child, if the mother is just one of those decides that she's going to use the child as basically a weapon to hurt you, to harm you, because you're not supporting the child. But I also will strongly encourage you to determine, I mean, it can be subjective what support is, right? I mean, not in court it can't, because there is a basic child support obligation that usually, I definitely know in North Carolina, you can go on to their website, to the North Carolina courts, and there is a basic child support obligation.
Calculator.
It's a calculator. It's actually, it's a chart, and it goes from 1 child to 6 children based upon your combined adjusted gross income, and it tells you that this is basically what it's going to be outside of extenuating circumstances. So you can figure that out long before you even go to court. And I say that because a lot of times when I was saying support is subjective, in courts it's not. You can go to that if you let's say you want to stay out of court and show good faith efforts, you can go to that chart and be like, okay, this is probably around what I should be paying.
Right.
But again, if there's affordability issues and you cannot, you have to pay something, right? There is a child, and the best interest of the child is not for 2 parents not to be taking care of that child.
Right.
There's just, in no circumstances, is that the best interest of the child. Maybe visitation might not be in the best interest, but I just can't really foresee situations where the best interest of the child is for only one person to be financially taking care of that child.
Right.
However, what do you think, when fathers, I don't know, I guess the same way that women weaponize children through visitation, men also try to weaponize the money, right? Sometimes the fathers try to weaponize the money, and they're like, well, I'm paying my child support, or doing it voluntarily, and it's not child support, not court-ordered child support.
Right.
But they want the mom to show them how they're spending it. Can they legally do that?
Short answer. No. Here's the thing. And again, that's the key term in family law, that best interest of the child, right? Unless you're able to show that my child is being deprived and I am paying consistently something and I don't understand why my child doesn't have what they need, then there's really you can't. I mean, we hope in good faith that mom is not using the child support money to get her nails done, but no, she does not have to provide you an itemized list of everything that she's done while she has the child with that money. Because some people will argue like, oh, well, shouldn't you go on towards your rent? Well, technically that's child support. That child has to stay in a home. So wherever it applied or wherever it needed to go for mom to be able to take care of your child really is what's at issue, right? Really is what's important. So it might not be, maybe you thought she should buy school's clothes and she bought something else for the child. That is splicing hairs. I really think that's not really a hill you want to die on. Like I said, unless you can show that, okay, my kid is over here and got holes in his clothes. It's just, my kid's over here basically looking homeless. What's going on? And I'm paying, several $100s or whatever you're paying. I don't understand. Help me understand that.
Right.
And that's something that you would want to more so formally bring up. So one of the things that we didn't discuss, but like if you have an order and mom's withholding a child, you can file like a motion for contempt. You can file a motion to show cause for those kind of things that concern you. But you can't control the money once it's been sent.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard people do that. And I just think it's the craziest thing, like you said, in those situations where the child is being taken care of. Of course, I could see you getting frustrated when your child is looking disheveled and they sick, they're not being taken to the doctor, they're not going to the dentist, they have cavities, and they're you paying the insurance, and you're taking care of those things, and then you see the mother at the beach, or in the latest Louis Vuitton,
flawless.
So yeah. Frustrated, but again, even in that kid's situation, you can't make her give you an itemized receipt of how she's spending that money. Now, again, you can do a show cause.
Right.
You have a concern about the best interest of your child and how your child is being taken care of. But please don't go to court and ask them. You want the mom to show you how she's spending that child support. I think if to think about that question and the way that question is posed, it would be the same way you would feel if she came and asked you, well, show me how you're spending your money to make sure that you're paying me enough child support.
There's that.
You would go crazy, right?
I need that updated taxes every year. Let me make sure I shouldn't get
You would
more.
not be okay with that. So, there are ways to make sure that your child, if you truly have concerns that your child is not being taken care of, then that's something those are issues that you need to bring into court about that. But I wouldn't focus it on, because you want her to, you're trying to control how she's spending the money. And then in the same vein, there are mothers and fathers. I guess fathers do it too. People break up, they start dating other people, just however the situation goes, and they try to control visitation. Who's around my kid?
Not be around my child.
Is that enforceable?
Not, unless there is something that puts that child in danger, like that person is a sex offender or things like that are like, okay, whoa, this is really a threat to my child. You cannot control who is around your child or where they're going while that other person is practicing or enjoying their visitation or enjoying their time with the child. So unless your child is in some form of danger, no, that's not something that you can. And honestly, I don't fully understand the need to go back and forth. I mean, to me, that is more of a I'm upset with this person thing than it really being about the kid. Because why does that even matter? If your child is not coming home bruised up, it's just something that is, again, like I'm seeing that my child is being harmed by some individual or some kind of environment. Why does it even matter? Right.
And I think the only thing that I can think about like that is before a child can really tell you what's going on, right? So if you're talking about a baby up until maybe age 5, when that child can like really form their thoughts and be like, okay, mom's hitting me, or mom's boyfriend, asked me to do some things and it made me feel uncomfortable, or if you definitely see children, and I'm not talking about the parents that, and I hate parents that do that talk negatively about the other parent, because a child is going to pick that up.
They do.
And they repeat those things, right? And so then you're like, oh, well, he don't want to go see Johnny. That's because you told him he shouldn't have went to see Johnny. But for those that the child really does have a healthy relationship with that other parent, and then suddenly they don't want to go over there.
Yeah.
Right. They seem a little scared or timid. Of course, people have their instincts, right?
Right.
Be mindful. Be watchful, but you cannot control what goes on in another person's household, right? I think one of the easiest things that I have heard, I think have given people peace, is just thinking about it like, a war. right? Because most of the times people do feel like they're in a war when they're going through the beginning stages of child support and visitation, right? But I can't go over, and as much as I may try, I might not can't go over and tell Germany how they need to train their soldiers,
right?
And you can't come over to the United States and tell me how I need to train my soldiers, right? You got to stay in your own little lanes,
right? And
train how you do best in your world, right? Those are two different worlds, and it's enough on the child to have to navigate it anyway, right? The best interest of the child is to try to do healthy co-parenting, but sometimes we know that is not possible, but for your own sake, just for your own sanity, just stop trying to have so much control over something that's outside of your space.
Right. And now I have seen some agree. And again, for the amicable folks, I think this is possible. I don't see it happening in the more contentious situations, but there are some agreements where the parents literally say, okay, we're not going to introduce, a new friend, however you want to put it, significant other to our child until, the mom or dad has met them to feel comfortable. And if that's something that the two of you could agree on, then great. Put it in there in your agreement if you think it's necessary. But again, those situations where you could barely be in the same room, right. I don't see that being a part of your order or a part that anybody agrees to. So to that I say, like you said, unless there's some kind of reasonable concern, safety wise, things like that, it's really something that's out of your control, and that kind of thing you have to let go of the things you can't control.
You really do. It's growth, but I think once you get there, you just will have so much more peace, which means the child will have so much more peace, right? And they'll be a healthier, happier child, and that's truly in their best interest. I think COVID introduced a lot of different things, especially with these stimulus checks. And they usually went, I believe, by definition, they went to the custodial parent. Or the parent that was, because they based the stimulus checks off of how they were filed taxes, right? How the taxes and stuff were filed. So they went to the custodial parent, usually the parent that had filed taxes on that child the previous year. I think currently in this year they're giving monthly stipends versus last year. And I think earlier this year they gave some big lump checks. Last year they were giving lump checks, but I think now they're giving smaller increments. For the child. And so for the non-custodial parent, are they entitled to that money? Are they entitled to split that money? How does that work?
There's nothing, unless it's in your order, there is nothing that requires the custodial parent to split those funds with you. One of the things I would really encourage parents to do if they're going through the process of getting an order in place is including that tax aspect. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. So sometimes if you have multiple children, you'll split the kids. Like one parent files for this kid and one parent files for this kid. Other times, maybe if you just share one child, they'll have it where even years is mom and odd years is dad, or vice versa. So that's something that you really want to make sure that you're considering in terms of if you're trying to go through the process of getting an order, you ask the court to go ahead and include. Because in that way, if you got a stimulus, well, stimulus is a little different because, COVID, that's a whole different situation. But, unless the court...
Even though you got to pay it back through taxes. But
but unless the court, so let's say if you had an order and mom got a stimulus on your year, then, mom needs to come up off some money because you were supposed to get some kind of return with that child. But again, there's multiple ways to skin that. It might be, like I said, the court might say, hey, one parent file and you split it evenly, or they may just give you differing years. Usually it's easier to just pick one year versus the other. But unfortunately, without an order, that is really what ties your hands, dads. I don't want you all to think that, if you're between jobs, you're behind on child support, all of these things that make you cautious and hesitant to do things, those are the things that really tie your hands. What ties your hands is not having an order, because there's nothing that anyone can do when you feel like you're not being heard, when you feel like you're not getting to see your child, when you feel like, you know, your things are being withheld from you, you don't even really know what's going on with your child. Without an order, no one can make mom do better.
Yeah. So. And I know that there are a lot of single fathers out there, full-time fathers. My fiance was one. He raised his oldest daughter full-time, got custody of her. So I know there are a lot of fathers out there that are full-time dads, right there, the custodial parent. They have the physical custody, but they don't want to enforce child support. And why do you think that is? I mean, I know one of the reasons that I have is because traditionally they just feel like they should be the providers, right? But again, I go back to legally, both parents are supposed to be financially taking care of that child. Why do you feel like some of the reasons that fathers don't tend to file for child support against moms?
My thought went to that. It's the societal, you know, what's socially acceptable roles, and it feeling, I guess, feminine to go and ask a woman for some money. But it's like, and I say to that extent, I mean, you have situations where this is a different topic, but like there are women who are paying alimony.
Right.
So it really is just what is fair based on these circumstances. And like you said, both of us laid down and made this child.
Right.
So both of us are responsible for the various costs that come with this child. And so single parenthood on either side is rough. You're doing it by yourself. You're doing the job of really a village.
Right.
And so while I respect a lot of the pressure and the roles and the expectations that are put on men, especially financially, I also challenge that at what point is that expectation, are you upholding that, taking away from your child? At what point does that become prideful?
Right.
Because your child could be able to do more if mom sent you a little cash app.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I understand not wanting to deal with the drama of it all. But like you said, that child can just do more. I mean, I know there are fathers that are like, she don't have anything. So why am I going to go through now and put the court systems into my life, and she going to end up paying $50 or, you know,
something that doesn't even really
help at all. So I think in those situations, I understand it's tough, but again, we go back to legally both parents should be obligated to help take care of that child, and you could just do more with two incomes than you can do with one.
You getting more than $50 is worth it to me, because that might be, I don't know, swimming lessons, who knows, whatever your child's involved in, it at least pays for that. So,
and I think a lot of the times, especially, I mean, you see kids now, they in every activity in the world, right? I mean, most kids that are playing sports don't start those sports in high school anymore,
right?
And those things are expensive. Like the most expensive thing for a child is going to be, of course, daycare. And that stops at around 5, thank goodness, when they go into pre-K. But even daycare, you know, that can be upwards of $1,500 per child. You know, on the low end, it's like $600. So, you know, you think about that, they get out of child, you know, daycare, but then if they start going into sports, I mean, my son is, like I said, he's an AAU track, and I easily spend $2,000 during track season on him. And he's in other sports. Right. So I think sometimes, I don't know, I think sometimes people don't consider, especially if you're that single full-time father, you know those costs, right? And then if you're on the opposite end, the father that wants the mom to account for all those things because you feel like what you're paying is too much. Like raising a child is expensive.
It is.
It's really expensive. And those utilities that are in that house, if that child is in that house, they're not just for them. If you have boys,
they eating up your food. I'm putting it out there.
They
Boys, they start
your
eating up their food around 7 or 8.
What is happening?
Get a BJ's account. It's over for you. So
it happens so quickly. I don't understand.
They start getting those big salad bowls for cereal.
And just all the milk.
Yeah, it costs. They use a whole gallon of milk in 2 days.
The kids' meals no longer. Like, they eat. So kids can be really, really expensive. So, I mean, I just say, like she said, track what you are spending on your child, especially if you haven't been taken to child support court and you're just doing that on your own and y'all are trying to work out things amicably. Right. Still make sure that you're tracking these things because you just never know when.
At least you're showing you doing something.
And you want to cover your bases at all times.
Right.
Is there anything else you can think about?
I would just encourage, you mentioned the calculator. Go in there if you know how much, mom makes, and see what you should be paying. Sometimes, just depending on the situation, sometimes you're doing more than you should. And sometimes that's why some people choose to keep it out of the courts because mom knows, he will be paying about half of what he's doing now. So let me not.
Right.
But I think it's just good for you to know where you should be. And then from there, especially if you could afford to do as much as you can. But I think the awareness of that might take away some of the anxiety too around child support. Like, the situation where he's not on child support. Like, if I try to get custody, then she's going to do X, Y, Z. Or if you already know what you're supposed to be paying, if you were under an order, and you know that, well, I already pay that more, then what's the problem? Let's just go ahead and get this custody stuff worked out so we don't have to argue at the end of the day. This is supposed to be about what's best for the kid, right? So as much as possible, you don't want to expose the child to all of this back and forth because it's hard enough, as you said, for them to navigate 2 different homes. They're not seeing mom and dad together all the time. Some amicable situations they do birthday things together, but for the most part, that kid is not seeing you together as is. So it's even worse to kind of put them in the middle with you arguing back and forth about them, which really is not about them. If you're really honest, if you're arguing like that, a lot of times it's because you all don't get along with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I will say this, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm going to make a very general statement. But I think the easiest way for those that are concerned about not having to pay child support, the best way to do it, because like I said, it's also visitation, how much visitation you get is determined upon, the amount of days. And child support is tied to how many days you see your child. See your child. Like, just, don't make it. If you are in a position, y'all live in the same city, I think will be the easiest thing to say that. If you're in a position where you can see your child on more than just the weekend, you can help out through the week. They can do some overnights is what they consider. The visitation is based on overnight stays, not just the pickups and drop-offs, but overnight stays. If you can get more of those and you have it in your schedule and you can do that and you're not... Please be doing it because, again, best interest of the child, and you want to see your child because your children will feel, they just doing this so they don't have to pay nothing.
Right.
So let your heart and mind be right. But if you can get more of those overnights, then do that, right? It is definitely going to benefit the child anyway, especially if you're going through a divorce. They're used to seeing both of y'all all the time. They don't want to have to go suddenly and see a parent one weekend out the month.
Right.
So...
Yeah, that is true. Part of the calculator is based on how many nights each parent has with their child. So it's definitely something, we're not saying to use it as a strategy. Right. We are saying that there's something to be aware of because the thought process behind that is that when you have your child, you're spending money on them. You have to feed them, you have to clothe them, etc. So that's where that whole thought process comes from.
Okay.
All right, dads. Well, we will also...
We helped y'all. We hope you helped
you. We really do. Hope we clarify some things. And we'll definitely have some resources in the show notes, especially for those dads who just have no idea where mom is. and no idea where their kid is and feel like just completely lost, right? We'll have some information on at least, something to help you get started, as well as, like I said, those free resources for those who are going to, represent themselves. And
we'll put the North Carolina Child Support Guidelines, those basic guidelines, so you can go directly to our website to see those if you're interested in knowing what that would be based upon y'all combined adjusted gross income.
Yes. All right. Well, good topic. We do not have time today for a listener letter, but if you would like to write into us, have questions, comments, shenanigans, concerns, divaadvice@gmail.com, divaadvice@gmail.com.
Yes.
It's so quick.
In the meantime, in between time, if you're on YouTube right now, please make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button below so that you can get us when we have new episodes. If you're on Instagram, Facebook, make sure you're following us. And like we said, you can listen directly to this episodes and future episodes and share episodes by going to our website, divasandducats.com. Go to podcast episodes and you can find all of our episodes on there and listen directly on the website.
Yes.
So in the meantime, in between time, have a great attitude.
Bye.
Bye.